Yes, I did, but I guess you didn't know. As I said, a story told.
Return of the Mack wasn't a comeback, it was a confession with a beat. He started writing it in jail, then walked out and turned it into a global smash. While the headlines got messier than a Saturday night voicemail, a supermarket incident with a stun gun, an airport firearm arrest in the mix, and yes, the now legendary body double sent to do his community service. Who does that? So here's the real question. Was Mark Morrison a mastermind who weaponized chaos to sell a hit, or a star who kept tripping his own victory lap? Because right when the chart said king, the choices said self-sabotage. A sudden flight to Barbados right before a court date. Short stints, big fines, bigger headlines. Meanwhile, the record refuses to die. Ads, remixes, samples, ka-ching. Today we're pulling receipts. Not fan lore, not fuzzy memories. Dates, charges, chart runs, and money trails. By the end, you'll know how a song written at rock bottom outlived every scandal attached to its creator, and whether the bad boy brand was genius or the most expensive mistake of the 90s. If your title says exposed, you've got 30 seconds to prove it. Let's do exactly that. The origin of the misconception. It's easy to believe the legend when the chorus feels like a victory parade. Return of the Mack doesn't walk into the room. It struts. The beat grins, the hook flexes, and the whole thing screams, "I'm back and better without you." Most people never look past that feeling. They file Mark Morrison under Unbothered King, the guy who took a heartbreak and turned it into champagne. Chart runs only turbocharged the myth. The single camped on radio like it paid rent, the album wouldn't leave the charts, and for a minute it felt like this dude was allergic to losing. But here's where the story gets bent. The swagger you hear isn't coming from a throne, it's coming from rock bottom. He started the record in a cell, swearing he'd flip the script from mess to momentum. That makes the song less, "Look at my empire," and more, "Watch me crawl out of the hole and still make it look like a dance." The public heard a comeback anthem. He wrote a survival manual with ad-libs. Then the branding confused everyone. On stage, he leaned into the rebel aesthetic. Handcuffs on props, dancers in police cosplay, like he was winking at the headlines. To fans, it read as fearless. To the industry, it read as complicated. The optics said, "I'm untouchable," right as the calendar said, "court date." You can see how the misconception takes shape. The louder the hook, the softer the context. People weren't wrong to think he was winning. They were wrong about how he was winning. And that's the trap. When a song becomes a personality, every red flag looks like part of the costume. The fines, bad boy tax, the short stints, rock star rite of passage, the risky choices, marketing. Except they weren't. They were real, and they were pricey. The hit masked the damage until it didn't. So let's peel off the gloss. If the myth says he rode scandal to success, the receipts say the opposite. The success was busy dragging the scandal behind it like a stubborn anchor. Which brings us to the part nobody likes to admit, the hot take that flips the whole narrative. The hot take. Here's the flip. Mark Morrison didn't leverage chaos to sell records. The chaos shrank the window his record opened. The myth says bad press equals good press. The timeline says bad press equals blown runway. Start with the dumbest masterstroke that wasn't. The community service body double. That's not rebel branding. That's a career booby trap. Right when Mack had the US wide open, he turned a local punishment into a national punchline, and a judge turned it into jail time. Momentum loves a tour. Judges love calendars. Guess which one wins? Then there's the taser in the supermarket era, the airport firearm incident, the fines, the flare-ups, each one a tiny tear in the parachute. One or two bad boy headlines can look like mystique. A pattern reads like risk. To radio programmers, to TV bookers, to labels deciding whether to pour real money into keeping a hot streak hot, and the Barbados detour before a court date, optics, optics, optics. Fans don't obsess over court schedules, but gatekeepers do. The people who slot you into award shows, late-night couches, and US morning TV hate surprises that come with lawyers. So the hot take is simple. The music created opportunity, the behavior shortened it. Return of the Mack was strong enough to bulldoze through the noise, ads, samples, remixes, but the artist runway kept getting chopped by headlines. If he'd stacked a steady 18 months of boring professionalism on top of that hit, we're probably telling a different story. Multiple US smashes, a world tour, a cemented lane. Instead, we get a legendary single dragging a scandal sled. It wasn't genius marketing. It was expensive mystique, the kind where the bill arrives before the encore. And that's why the next part matters. Once you see how each flashpoint clipped his wings, you can zoom out and watch the same loop repeat. New high, new headline, same result. Let's widen the lens. The pattern, rinse, repeat, repercussion. Once you zoom out, Mark Morrison's story stops looking like isolated mistakes and starts looking like a loop that just keeps replaying. Every time he scored a win, a headline showed up to cancel it out. It's almost like he had two careers running side by side, one on the charts, one in court. First loop, 1996 to 1997. He drops Return of the Mack, dominates global radio, and becomes Britain's R&B poster boy. Then, boom, he's caught with a taser in a supermarket, allegedly prepping for a robbery. Cue mugshot, fines, jail time. Barely out, he's back in the tabloids for punching a guy who insulted his music, smashing a photographer's camera, and allegedly trying to bring a firearm onto a plane. It's like the man was speed-running every chapter of a celebrity cautionary tale. Then there's the sample remake economy. Modern artists don't just reference classics, they build on them. If someone flips Return of the Mack into a new single, they've got to clear the composition, and often the master if it's a true lift, not a replay. That's writer, publisher splits, possible master fees, plus ongoing performance royalties when the new record streams, spins, and charts. Translation: one hit can parent a dozen mini hits, each mailing home a thank you check. Add evergreen streams. Catalog consumption is the quiet giant of modern music. People toss Mack on party playlists, throwback Thursday mixes, TikTok nostalgia loops. Those repeat listens pile up micropennies into real cash. It's not just Spotify, it's Apple, Amazon, YouTube Music, plus neighboring rights from global radio, TV plays that don't run through your PRO. When December parties hit or a meme resurfaces, the graph spikes like clockwork. Now the label side. A song this sticky usually ends up at the center of catalog deals and admin re-ups. Companies love predictable assets. Financiers love predictable cash flows. If a rights holder packages the track with a few cousins and sells a slice, it's because the yield looks boring in the best way. Whether that's an outright sale, a term deal, or just better admin, the message is the same. Return of the Mack is annuity music. What about the artist's pocket? It depends on the mix of rights he controls. Writer's share can't be assigned away by a publisher, equals paid through PROS. Publisher share equals depends on the pub deal. Master royalty or points equals depends on the label contract and recoupment. Direct license fees from certain syncs equals negotiated case by case. Even with messy life chapters, the royalty system doesn't judge, it just tallies. That's why the irony hits so hard. The song aged like champagne, the headlines aged like milk. Yet the bank only cares about predictable plays. If you've ever wondered how an artist can go years without a new smash and still live comfortably, this is the blueprint. One nuclear-grade single, endlessly recycled by culture, brands, and younger artists. And it sets up the next twist perfectly. If the money machine kept humming, why did the personal story keep misfiring? Time to zoom back from the ledger to the life and watch how the 2000s and 2010s tried over and over to turn a comeback into a rerun. 2000s and 2010s, when the plot thickens instead of builds. The 2000s should have been the consolidation era, the calm after the coronation. New album, tidy tour, easy daytime TV charm. Instead, it played like a spin-off nobody asked for. Headlines got longer, records got shorter, and the comeback kept resetting back to zero. Early 2000s, the rumor mill flips from messy to cinematic. An argument over a bracelet spirals into abduction and auto theft allegations. That's the kind of story that eats an entire news cycle and still wants dessert. Even when details wobble and officials look shaky, the takeaway sticks. Brand equals chaos. For program directors deciding who gets prime ads that week, complicated is a hard pass. He tries a pivot you rarely see mid-fame. New faith, new name, Abdul Rahman, and a tone that sounds genuinely humbled. For a moment, it feels like we're finally getting the adult version of the Mack. Reflective, measured, almost dad mode. But the past isn't a chapter, it's a boomerang. One nightclub dust-up here, one charge there, each incident a little nick on the reputation, each nick a reason for a gatekeeper to say, maybe next quarter. Musically, there are bright spots that deserve more oxygen. Innocent Man, 2006, isn't a cultural earthquake, but it's not a punchline either. There are features, there's craft, there are flashes of the old chest-out charisma. The problem is attention economics. You're competing with your own myth. When editors can choose between, "Hear his new single," and "You will not believe what he did now," they'll pick the one that prints clicks on autopilot. The 2010s underline the pattern in thick Sharpie. Another arrest headline here, a stray charge there, and then, just when you think the story's packed up, he pops up with a 2014 EP. The title even reads like a thesis, "I am what I am." It's frank, almost defiant, like he's done negotiating with the public imagination. But imagine trying to promote a nuanced project in a world that still knows you as the guy with the greatest hook of 1996 and a tabloid saga that never learned to sit. Meanwhile, the song refuses to retire. It gets synced, sampled, memed, remixed, the cultural equivalent of a royalty treadmill. So when you see him resurface, cameos, interviews, community events, you're looking at a paradox, a man whose present tense keeps getting judged by a chorus and a case file. And that's the heartbreak of the 2000s to 2010s chapter. The talent didn't vanish, the attention did. Not because listeners stopped loving Return of the Mack, but because the marketplace only had room for one Mark Morrison at a time. The hit or the headline. The hit kept paying. The headline kept collecting. If the 90s were the birth of the myth, the 2000s and 2010s were the invoice, proving that charisma can launch you, but consistency is what lets you land. So where is he now, really? Age, home base, money, and what the legacy looks like when the smoke clears. Let's bring it up to date. Right now, the man, the myth, the mailing address. Let's get current. After decades of headlines, legal tangles, and one immortal hit, where's Mark Morrison today? And more importantly, what does it say that he's still here? Alive, not a ghost. First, yes, he's alive and still very much in the public eye from time to time. Born May 12, 1974, he's 51 years old as of 2025. Plenty of his peers from the 90s have drifted off the radar. He's stuck around. Home turf and moves. He's reportedly settled in the Palm Beach/South Florida area, a long way from his Leicester roots. In recent years, he's also resurfaced in public discourse in Leicester, England, speaking at events about crime, youth, and community. That multi-geographic footprint helps him keep audiences in both markets, UK and US, aware that he hasn't entirely vanished. Net worth, caution, estimate. Public records and celebrity tracker sites estimate his net worth in the ballpark of $5 million. That's not a headline-making number in global superstar terms, but it's solid for an artist whose consistent earnings hinge mostly on one record. Take that with a grain of salt. These estimates don't see private debts, splits, tax liabilities, or label recoupments. What we do know is that Return of the Mack continues to generate income, and that kind of catalog resilience is what undergirds his financial baseline. The legacy in motion. He's no longer chasing the spotlight the way he did in the 90s, but he isn't hiding either. His occasional public appearances, media interviews, and hometown engagements show an artist at peace with his dual identity as both myth and human. He's trending less for what he does and more for what survived. What he's remembered for, what still works, and what's next. What he'll be remembered for. The perfect storm of heartbreak and swagger condensed into a 4-minute anthem. The hit that outlasted the mistakes. What still works? The catalog, licensing, syncs, remixes. The song keeps getting calls. Younger generations discover it fresh. What might be next? Speculative. A deluxe reissue? A nostalgia tour stop? A documentary? If the catalog can draw, the story can sell. What matters now? He doesn't have to prove he's back. He just has to prove he's still relevant. And he quietly does that every time someone cues Mack in 2025. So yes, the man is still in motion. The myth is still potent. And that mailing address, whether in Florida or Leicester, doesn't matter as much as the fact he still draws attention just by showing up. Next up, the final wrap. What the real legacy is, the gravity of the hit versus the headlines, and your call to action to ride this same storytelling style for the next video.